Imagine being in hospital hooked up to an IV pole with all sorts of things dripping their way into you, and whenever you had to go to the toilet, you'd have to take your pole with you. You and the pole would be together all the time. You'd become very close.
I come from a very musical family. I play saxophone, and I think if I'd continued on to make a career out of that, there may have been a chance where I might not have enjoyed it so much. So keeping that on the side means that I still continue to enjoy it. But I've always liked using my hands and making things and taking part in really practical activities. Industrial design really appeals to me because the result of all the design work is a physical product which you can hold and interact with, whereas music is more an emotional level which stops, in a sense, once the music has stopped. The inspiration for my invention came from when I was visiting a good friend of mine in hospital who had to live with an IV pole sort of day in, day out. The main issue with current designs is they're very difficult to manoeuvre. So the base wants to spin off in its own direction and pulls you along with it. Because patients are physically attached to these pieces of equipment, performing very simple tasks like getting up and walking down the hallway suddenly becomes a huge challenge. A lot of the other problems are to do with convenience, especially for medical staff when they're administering IV therapy. There's nowhere to place the items that you're hanging on the pole, so usually they get placed on a patient's bed or on top of the patient in some cases. Another problem which existing designs lack is a proper area to hold on to. This project meant a lot to me because it provided the opportunity to potentially really make a difference.
So has he really made a difference? Please welcome Duncan Hellmers.
I remember about 20-odd years ago when I was in hospital, and one of the things you had to do was take your IV pole, you know, when you did go to the loo, and the really annoying thing was that your line, you know, could get caught up, or if you ran over anything, the IV pole would just get all trapped, or even if you bumped into something, you had to reverse your way back from it to be able to get going again. And when you crook, that's the last thing that you want to be able to do. So
That's right, yeah.
Let's have a look at this extremely beautiful objet, which is not the IV pole, but it's your IC pole.
It's the IC pole, yes. Yeah. IC pole, yes.
No, it's the IC pole. OK, and apart from it being absolutely gorgeous, let's have a look at, I mean, just moving it like that, it seems to move a lot more smoothly. Let's do the ultimate test. Oh, hello. And even more impressive, when you bump into something, you don't have to back around because it still swings on around like that. Because this is articulated?
That's right. It's got a bearing in the base which allows the pole to spin independently of the rest of the wheels, which means if it does bump into something, you don't have to work your way around it. The pole does it all by itself.
Great. And let's just go from the top here. You've got your hooks up here, so you can have your drip bags hanging from there.
That's right. There are 6 hooks as opposed to the standard 4, and each of them can be folded up individually, meaning that you only need to have the hooks down that you're going to be using at any one time, which also softens the look of it, especially for paediatrics wards.
It's already super pretty, don't worry, but that just makes it that much less, you know, of a trap. And I like that you can move it with these handles, which are pretty wide.
Yeah, they're designed not only for the human hand, but also as a pump mount. So both of these components are height adjustable, so if you want to move the handle and tray down to the base to free up extra pole space, you can do that. But inevitably, you're going to run out of room to place pumps, so you can actually place 3 on each of these handles. Very
thoughtful of you to include this ashtray as well. That's going to be very popular outdoors.
Yeah, well, one of the common problems is when setting up the pole to provide intravenous administration, you run out of room to place items when you're setting up the pole.
Well, instead of having to put it on the patient.
Putting it on the patient, putting it on the bed or on a side table, there's a convenient height adjustable tray where you can do it all right here.
And the whole setting is height adjustable, isn't it? The handles can be...
Everything can be adjusted to the ideal height.
So great
So
for
that's
kids.
great. So in a paediatric ward, you could lower everything down for children.
You can, both these components are removable as well. So if you're in a paediatrics ward and the tray might be getting in the way, you can take it off completely and move the handle down to a child's height.
It looks like even I could use that from my chair.
That's the other thing. Moving with a wheelchair or a bed, these sort of poles often try to spin off in their own direction, which makes them very hard to clamp as well. Whereas this one, you can clamp it and the wheels are free to spin whichever direction they want.
And how do you keep it clean?
That's partly the reason why it's white, because it's really easy to see if there's a bit of contaminated, liquid or other foreign objects that shouldn't be on there, as opposed to the standard steel ones.
Have you done any testing? Have you given
I've
this to
done some
nurses?
initial testing with this model, yes.
And what did the nurses think?
They thought it was a much better alternative to the current ones, which are just plagued with problems at the moment. So any innovation in this area is really welcomed.
So basically you have a market that's all of the hospitals and probably all of the aged care facilities in Australia
yeah,
and
that's right.
the world.
At the moment, due to sort of higher unit costs initially, it'd probably be looking more at the private sector. But as the manufacturing process and distribution becomes streamlined, the price will come down. It'll be accessible for everyone.
And what's the price going to be?
At the moment, this is around $600, which is sort of about 3 times the price of one of these.
Right.
But obviously, as numbers go up and everything gets streamlined, the price will be very comparable.
Well, it's the most useful icy pole I've ever come across, Duncan. Thanks for bringing it in and showing it to us.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.